In this video, we will study another topic, an era of darkness. It is a non-fiction written by Shashi Tharoor. An era of darkness is the title of the work. Era represents almost 200 years of British which ruled India. It results India was merged into a darkness. India had been cruelly treated. The people of India had been treated very cruelly, and how Sachidar was able to discover how Britishers had ruled India with merciless. An era of darkness which tells the horrors and atrocities committed by the British invaders. After British invading India, they had ruled every one of India with the horror and atrocities, and how the Britishers managed to rule India in a cruel manner. This book is written and published in the year 2017. An Era of Darkness, another title is Inglorious Empire, What the British Did to India. This is also another topic. The genre of the novel, as I said, it is a non-fiction and it is focusing on the historical India which is ruled by British. For this work, Shashi Tharoor got a Sahitya Academy Award in the year 2019. As we know that Shashi Tharoor is author of many bestsellers. He is not just a writer, he is a diplomat and a politician. He is currently a member of parliament. Now I shall start with a summary of the work, An Era of Darkness. How the book is opening, that Shashi Tharoor begins with British ruling in India leads to violence and plunder and exploitation. So when the British starts to rule in India, the India was completely ruled with the kind of violence, and the British had stolen all the resource, both natural and human resource, only for the benefits of the Britishers. India was agriculturally and industrially backward at the time. So at the time when Britishers came to India, there was no industry and agriculture developed. The British used this to suppress Indian sovereignty and export resources. Since at the time we did not have any agricultural and industrial technology, we didn't know how to compete with other countries in terms of agriculture and industry. So Britishers had used this opportunity to suppress all the farmers, agriculture farmers, and export their agricultural resources to their own countries, that is England. Over 2 centuries, British exploitation led to famine and widespread poverty. So when the Britishers had started to export the natural resources from India to England, here in India, all the farmers were taken to poverty. They were deprived of basic foods. So poverty and famine had completely ruled Indian farmers. Some British people claim India benefited from their rule. Some British people tell that only because of British India got benefited, but it is not true. Shashi Tharoor argues that India was robbed and gained nothing from British rule. So what this author is claiming, that when Britishers had ruled India, India has got nothing. India's resources were gained by only British. Next, India's suffering under British rule cannot be overlooked. So it is completely true that India's only being suffered when British had ruled it. In the 18th century, India was a major trading hub rich in resources, in all kinds of resources like natural resources and human resources. Once upon a time, India was rich. Particularly in 18th century, India contributed 23% to global trade, making it highly valuable. So in terms of global trade, India has contributed 23% of resources in the global market. So our products that were produced by Indians were taken into global trade. The British used superior military power to overthrow Indian rulers. So we used to surprise that British had thrown all the Indian soldiers and appointed British soldiers in the military power. in order to remove the Indian rulers all over India, like villages and in some cities, Indian rulers had ruled the particular places. In order to remove the rulers of India, they had appointed military powers. So, so that the Indian original rulers may lose their powers. Before British rule, India was divided into Mughal decline. So before British came to India, India was already divided by Mughal empires, that is Muslim power. The British East India Company exploited political instability. So when Mughal ruled India, there were no unity among the Indians. British when came to India, they had used this the opportunity to remove the Mughal Empire and Indian rulers and want to settle in India in order to rule by themselves. They gain control through bribery, deception, and threats. So these are the different ways they came to India in the way of bribery and by cheating the rulers by giving bribery and threatening the rulers, threatening the people who are in the power of ruling country. So in this way, Britishers came to India. Deindustrialization to strengthen British rule. So here, Britishers wanted to deindustrialize India so that they can set up industry in India. The British weakened India's economy by restricting industries. So after British had come into full power to rule India, Britishers had cancelled all the Indian industries so that Britishers could set up their own industries in India. Indian textiles were globally popular before British India. We should know that before British came to power, Indian textiles were popular among the global trading. India was forced to become an importer from Britain. So India was forced to become an importer from Britain. British economic dominance grew at India's expense. British economic dominance grew at India's expense. So here, Britishers became very popular only because of Indian sources. British had used only Indian sources and sold the sources in their own countries, in other countries, and later the Britishers became popular, but it is only due to the India's expense. Next, destruction of the shipping and the shipbuilding industries. So, destroying the shipping of Indians. The British aimed for a trade monopoly and controlled India's coastline. So, here, while the British doing that, they had stopped India shipping, which trading with other countries. What Britishers doing? They had started their own ship, and British ship only would trade with other countries. The ships which were manufactured and sailed by Indians were removed. They destroyed Indian ships, collapsing the shipbuilding industry by the 1850s. Trade with the neighboring nations was cut off. So, those who are Indian ships could not go to other countries. High British tariffs made exporting goods impossible. So, high British tariffs made exporting goods impossible. So, if you want to travel to other countries by ship, you would be you have to pay high tariff. If you are asked to pay high tariff, you cannot proceed to other countries. Britain took control of all industries, asserting complete dominance over India. That is how British had spread their powers all over country by taking the powers of Indian rulers, the way of ship, the way of industries. Next, differing opinions on United India. Many Westerners believe Britain united India. So here, Britishers had thought that they had only united all the states of India and they united all the people of India into one, but it is not true. India historically saw itself as one entity across Asia. Before Britishers came in the Asian continent, India was separated. India was one of the best continents. British rule was a form of organized exploitation. The purpose of Britishers came to India is completely exploiting the resources of India in terms of wealth, in terms of human and in terms of natural resources. Industrial progress under British rule was a myth. So it is not truth that Indian industry were developed at the time of Britishers. It is not truth. British bureaucracy ignored Indian cultural systems. Also, Britishers did not accept Indian education. Many became landless peasants due to British policy. Due to Britishers' rule, many farmers lost their lands and lost their identity of being the peasants and farmers. They lost the lands because the lands were taken under the control of Britishers. Farmers were displaced and forced into poverty. So when the lands were taken by Britishers, original farmers lost. They were not able to find jobs and they were let into poverty. They were searching other places for surviving. Next, the press. In terms of journal, the British claimed to introduce free press but controlled it. Britishers had introduced a free press. Anyone can start a journal, anyone can start a newspaper, but there is a in 1799, the East India Company enacted laws to regulate informations. Journalists criticizing state were jailed and censored. So, if any journal of India is criticizing the Britishers, would be taken to jail. Local newspapers faced heavy restrictions and financial burdens. Local newspapers were strictly controlled. The Britishers saw the press as a threat to their rule. So, according to the Britishers, Indian press is a kind of a threat to the British government. Only pro-British media was truly free to publish. Those who want to support British government, they can only run press and journals. British contribution to starvation and illiteracy, starvation and famine. So these are the evidence that our country were led to starvation, illiteracy and famine. Over 30 million Indians died due to British policies. The British refused famine aid to avoid setting a precedent. In 1943, the Bengal famine was worsened by stockpiling for war. So in 1943, there was a famine in Bengal. Britishers had stopped giving food to the people who were affected by famine, allotted the food only for the war soldiers. British authorities rejected American and Canadian famine relief. So at the time of famine in Bengal, other countries like American and Canada wanted to give relief to the Bengal people, but Britishers ignored to accept the relief fund to the people. Illiteracy and education suppression. How illiteracy was spread. India had a rich history in mathematics, science, and architecture. India was once upon a time rich in history, mathematics, science, and architecture. But the British did not modernize Indian education, but instead restricted it. Ancient universities like Nalanda and Vikramasrila revived European institutions. So once upon a time, India education institution like Nalanda and Vikramasrila had competed with the British education, but the Britishers had stopped ancient educations. Traditional teacher-student learning was widespread before British rule. Before the British rule, there was a good relationship between a teacher and a student. Educated Indians were marginalized in Indian British society. When British ruling India, educated Indians were not given any position in the government, they were completely ignored. So, this is how Shashi Tharoor has talked about India's darkness during the British government. I hope that you could understand all the points which were mentioned in the book, An Era of Darkness. Thank you for watching.